Welcome to the podcast. We are on the Pollute Your Soul podcast here with Michael Lewis Aspen. We have a guest on this show. You're a veteran theologist, Christian political commentator, and friend of the show. Thank you, Jason Willits, for coming onto the show. We're here to pollute your soul with the truth, with a good time, and with love for yourself and the universe. Thank you for coming to the show. Let's talk.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Yeah, let's talk. Let's go, man. What do you got?
What do you got? What do I got? I got a lot of questions. You have a lot of amazing experiences in life that we could kind of go over and talk about how they relate to a lot of current events right now. You are in Iraq. I'm getting confused right now. There's so much IRAs that we're going to fucking war with right now. But you are an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran, and you're in the National Guard. And we met through numerous different things, political things. But yeah, so talk about what it was like being deployed to first Kuwait, then eventually Iraq.
Right. So I had gone into college as a member of the National Guard and remember driving in on September 11th wondering what in the world were these towers and why would they have anything to do with my life in Nebraska. And within a couple of years, that was 2003, I had been turned into a truck driving unit and from infantry and been essentially conditioned to know that I was going to be going eventually. And we all met together for our 2 weeks of training at your National Guard units typically did. And there were some new bodies in the barracks sleeping around us. And I didn't really think of it as a young 22-year-old at the time. And lo and behold, that Sunday night, we were put in for a standard formation and told, hey, you're going to be in Iraq within a month. Or Kuwait within a month or so. I had not believed in any of the narrative. I had wondered why we were not having a war declared if they were going to be putting my life at risk when I had volunteered to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, or an imminent threat. And I guess 9/11 was the imminent threat that justified it. So after a lot of reading, a lot of prayer, and a lot of trying to figure things out, I decided that I wouldn't be a conscientious objector. I'd just sort of do my part to keep the man next to me alive and observe critically and really see what I saw, you know?
You saw a lot, but one of the first things you kind of tell me about when you got to Kuwait is when you read the 9/11 Commission report. How did that go? What was your opinion on that at the time? Because I feel like around current day, nobody really even looks at that shit because everybody already knows it's all bullshit. But I think maybe sometimes people should just look back and really kind of see how ridiculous it really was. So what was your opinion at the time of that?
Well, I'm a data-driven guy. There's probably some spectrum stuff somewhere in there, you know. And so I sat in Kuwait. We were given 2 weeks to acclimatize, get used to the heat before we were going to be driving into Iraq and actually in danger. And so I sat and read Kierkegaard's Fear and Trembling, which is essential for anybody who's going to war. If you have faith and don't really wonder where God's leading you in all this, and the 9/11 Commission report. And if anyone will pull up the 9/11 Commission report for themselves and index, just search WTC7, or it's 7 WTC, the 2 times it's actually mentioned, I believe it is. And the 2 times it is mentioned, the Office of Emergency Management Headquarters is in Building 7, and they, despite the building being evacuated, hunker down in their bunker. And other than that, they don't even bother giving us an excuse. And that was I just, as a 22-year-old, I was like, well, lie to me about that. At least tell me something.
The office fires.
Right? Just something. Office fire, something. Just give me something printed on an official government commission report. And please, give me something. And there was nothing there. And I went on to...
Yeah. I can't believe they kind of come up with a good lie or something like. At least with the Epstein stuff, and we're not gonna get into that right now. But at least with that, they're like, it was the Democrats. Like they just say it's the Democrats' fault.
What frustrated me is I had read enough Baudrillard at that time to know that if you omit something from something so essential as a commissioned report, commissioned artwork, right? You omit it. Now all of a sudden it just didn't happen. You forget all about it. Nobody goes back and looks at those documents, as you say. So if you just simply omit certain things that you can't lie about, it didn't happen within a few generations. And I think that's something that when you asked me to speak and answer some questions that you had, those generations, just knowing how quickly, watching Iran and watching that build up was so similar within 20 years that it drove me bonkers.
Yeah, so, that's kind of why I have you here, is because I don't want the next generation to fall to the same propaganda that not you, but like your generation fell through, because I feel like you kind of knew it was bullshit, but you were already like, you were in the National Guard in '99. So it's not like you, which a lot of people did. It's not like you joined because you like bought it.
Right. I wanted to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, since I was about 6. Maybe 7. I think it was because when you get to first grade, you don't get to play with the toy train anymore. And I was like, what? And I went home and I was like, Mom, I'm not going to school anymore. And she's like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to join the Army anyway. Like, why do I need to do this? So ever since that young age, I did want to. And figured guard, finish college, decide whether or not I wanted to go active at that time, and then history took me instead, I suppose.
What type of missions or like sort of procedures did you go through in Iraq? What were you exactly doing?
Yeah, so Dick Cheney, back in, we were just discussing
the oil company.
It's the same company. I believe it was LBJ. Had some influence clear back in Vietnam. So this is a company that's been around forever. But I mentioned in one of the chapters of my thesis for my bachelor's, I wrote a bachelor's thesis on basically a memoir of my time in Iraq. And so one of the questions that had come up was with regards to armor. And I watched Donald Rumsfeld get put on the spot, watched him get fired. And so I wrote an essay about that. But I sourced...
The journalist got fired.
This one's, the Brown and Root, Kellogg Brown and Root Services. So I got to essentially escort 3 or 4 semi-trucks for every U.S. Army Freightliner long-haul truck. So there were 3 or 4 times the number of third country national civilians that had been hired by Kellogg Brown and Root, KBR Services, Dick Cheney's company, that he had retired from as CEO in order to run for vice president, and then was given a $6 billion, $7 billion contract that nobody else could bid for.
Yeah.
Had the oil technology to be able to increase the productivity of the Iraqi nationalized wells, and assumed that they'd be able to step in there and say, you will take our technology early on in the war. And Iraq said no, because then we'll owe you forever. And that fell apart. But I think that had a lot of the idea that maybe that service and the increased output, as well as the freedom that liberation would be provided, might, they thought, lead to a short war. But by the time I got there, Rumsfeld had fired the army, and that was the last job that Saddam had provided anybody for 10 years. And so when you fire hundreds of thousands of trained soldiers, they go home and they get angry and they wage war on your occupying force. I mean, it's not rocket surgery.
So who did he fire? Exactly.
The Ba'athist regime. All of Saddam's men, all of the army, all of everybody in Iraq proper.
Yeah. And so, what did they eventually fought back against?
They went home and started an insurgency.
Okay.
Just like I would have done. I was watching Red Dawn as a child going, man, if those Soviets ever invade Nebraska, I'm going to take them all out with my little gunpowder toilet
Yeah.
roll dynamite stick that
That's
I'm
what
going to
people
create.
don't think about, about like our like that support the presence in certain countries. Like um they don't take into consideration what if it was the U.S. because nobody has like invaded the U.S. since was the 1812 war. Like, I mean, so nobody can have that frame of reference at all. You
I
know.
I actually use that to explain what's going on in Israel Palestine right now. The idea that if the document that was basically Germany paid Mexico, I want to say it was about $12 million to invade the U.S. during World War One, and said if you invade and you declare war on the United States in the South, we'll give you back the land that they took from you.
That's yeah.
And so in my fictitious, I watched a little Philip K. Dick, and I was like, hey, man, I'm going to write one that's on Estados Unidos, right? Those of you that are Spanish speaking, um, your land is now Spain's. Europe just declared it. And guess what? They're shipping Spain over here to occupy your land. And if you don't like it, you can go to either Mexico or Canada. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's a perfect analogy. You'd have, Texas is Gaza. You'd have, it'd be great. So watch for that forthcoming, historical, futuristic sci-fi book
Yeah. One day.
one day.
That could be like a Black Mirror episode. Do you know that show?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what certain circumstances that did you fall under during this? Like any shootouts or anything like that? Like what really stuck with you there?
Well, I mean, I witnessed violent death by the first mission. I was still in training, quote unquote. Um, and it was a improvised explosive device in a 7.5 ton truck of Marines just blew up like popcorn, and I went, wow, okay, like it's real. Took sort of the emotional reaction and just tucked it away and said, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to survive. Really thought, I was young, your age. Back in the day, the internet was just a baby,
Yeah, it was completely different.
But if you wanted to be on global television to be kidnapped by a terrorist and beheaded, I mean, you got camera right there, man, right in her face,
Yeah.
So I kind of figured, well, maybe, you always, I don't know. I've always been one of those, what is the universe trying to use me for here, right? Well, maybe I'm going to get captured and beheaded. And right before I get beheaded, I'll get a chance to, chew out Dick Cheney on global television. And boy, that'll
like
stop the war. That'll happen. That'll fix it all. And then I was a blown wheel seal away from that happening. We were in north of in Baghdad and Balad in the turnaround point, and we had a blown wheel seal and had to throw together another team to take what would have been our mission north, so that we could fix that and then head south. And then they got ambushed.
Team that would have been you.
It would have been us, right?
Okay.
And somehow the only death I believe was a third country national. I think for maybe Turkey.
Yeah.
And none of our soldiers were killed. They were hit. They were damaged. They were injured in some interesting ways. But that sort of woke me up. Said, okay, hey, just be patient, Jason.
Weren't they going to let's say, like capture people, that group of people that
Right. Yes. I did forget that. Yes, the detail that they did have zip ties in their pants. There were about 50 of them.
That is crazy.
Allegedly, there were about 50 of them. I believe they claimed that about 25 were killed in the defense of the semi trucks on the road. There was 3 convoys basically all came together at once. And yeah, they had zip ties and they had open trunks in the sedan. At least 4 different sedans, pickup cars with their trunks open, ready to take snatch and grab. So that was the mission for them.
Explain the lack of like sufficient armor that was there. You've talked to me about.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Rumsfeld being put on the spot there. So it wasn't necessarily a lack of sufficient armor so much. It was The question at the time was, why didn't we have better armor? And that question was put in the mouth of a specialist who asked it to Donald Rumsfeld by a reporter who was going north in a soft armored Humvee. So I think he was just a little angry. Chattanooga
Yeah.
Times Free Press runs a story. I didn't like the up armor kits. The non-up armor, you could actually look aggressive and fight back. You had your rifle right out the window. You weren't able to do that when they sealed you in a oven. And so without air conditioning, you almost died. You couldn't defend yourself necessarily on a truck by truck basis. You had to rely on your roving gun trucks. I didn't
So you
appreciate
couldn't
it much.
point the gun out and
Couldn't do anything. You just sat there and hoped that there wasn't a mine underneath the road.
So if was it still at least bulletproof at all?
We joked that, yeah, yes, it would stop an AK-47. So yes, it would stop AK-47 rounds pretty easy. So yes, great. We kind of joked that bombs, like if the bombs they used, it really didn't matter. Like it would just slow it down and it would stay in your body instead of passing clean through. It's really how we kind of looked at it.
Yeah.
We're like, this is gonna be painful forever.
Yeah.
And then because of that, of course, as your defenses, then Syria started selling copper-plated, what are called EFPs, or explosively formed projectiles. So basically, the copper plate shatters, and all those pieces are spun into heat darts of copper lead that just make Swiss cheese out of your armor and start fires inside of them. So.
And you were mainly like escorting supplies, or what type of
entire divisions. We were what's called a National on Above Corps unit, so we actually put more mileage in Iraq on our vehicles than any other truck battalion in the entirety of OIF, Operation Iraqi Freedom, until like the very end when somebody allegedly beat us by a few miles, and I'm pretty sure that they were watching it carefully and making sure they got those extra miles on their trucks when they were pulling out, So we were rolling 3rd Infantry Division and all their equipment in.
Okay.
So that they could go and assault Kirkuk and Fallujah and a lot of the northern areas, Tikrit, Talafar. That was a pretty interesting town.
Did you ever kind of think that I'm a part of the National Guard? Why aren't I back in Nebraska? Being like, or is that just so normal at the point where all National Guard divisions just are automatically like, you're gonna go to Africa right now?
Before the global war on terror, it was kind of the old boys club, everybody hanging out, training on the weekend, one weekend a month, and just, having a good time. I think that the global war on terror really professionalized a lot of them, so that now the National Guard understanding is that you will probably be deployed to places like Africa or the Middle East at some point.
Mm-hmm.
How that aligns with the fact that before World War I, we were still debating whether or not we still wanted a standing army. You know what I mean? Like how that aligns.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Within 100 years, 125 years, all of a sudden there's no way to just be I just want to be the guy that defends the Constitution. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go make these guys money. I don't want to go after the economic hitman. I don't want to follow up on our foreign policy just to mop up the problems so that NATO is reliably capturing influence,
What is your opinion on NATO? Because like I feel like if you question around some people, if you like question our alliances, they will like come at you. They'll be like, "This is why World War III hasn't happened because of NATO."
I don't know. We need a form of alliance. We need a form of trade. We need a form of, a sphere of influence that's beyond just national. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the concept of the holon?
I don't
This is going to
know.
seem like
I
it's
don't know.
off. It's going to seem off.
You're good. Yeah.
Trust me, it's not. Anything that is a whole unto itself that is also a part of another whole is a holon. Okay.
Whole
So
dash on.
no, HOLON.
Okay.
It's just holon.
Okay.
Okay. But yes, anything that's, so you are a holon within your family, which is a holon within the community, which is a holon within the county, which is a holon within the state, which is a holon within the United States, which is a holon within now NATO versus BRICS. But that's such a boomer post World War II world that consciously that only exists because there's so many boomers still in office, and that way of thinking is still in power.
Yeah, I mean,
the awareness and the ways that I see your generation or younger seems that there's almost a desire not to adhere to a nationalist identity if it at the cost of at the expense at the if it costs perpetual war, if you have to invest perpetual war in being all powerful, it seems to me there's a desire to say let's move away from that and towards more of a trilateral or global. I don't know. Like how do you feel your generation sees globalist tendencies?
there is another part that wants to be, we are the world. We are one with everybody else. We must be everybody's ally. We must, be the babysitter for all these poor and inefficient countries and ensure blah 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 blah. And then so some people do kind of support that. Like if another country has a policy that we disagree with, we should impose like sanctions or tariffs on them. If it's a political opinion that America doesn't generally agree with. Then there's the other part, which is the more nationalist, isolationist, that is just completely all those countries can go to hell. Let's tariff all of them, focus on American industries, and let's not be allies to them. And that side wouldn't even be MAGA really. That because like that kind of like nationalist, like all the like let's incentivize American industries. Let's not invade these other countries. Or I say that side is a combination of both left and right. To be honest with you, and I think that's the side that should be preferred. I don't think we should be the world's babysitter. And then I'd say there's a third side that is just agrees with everything of the narrative.
What about the industry involved in it? Like something that I came to realize that if they could make it if an entire building is just missing from the commission report, nobody bothered to say, hey, we should probably put something in there, give them an excuse, something. I mean, the run up to Iraq was so similar to the run up to Iran in what it sounded, yes, right? Modern days, just what, a month ago, almost, right? Iran has, I believe what I had read was like 63% enrichment, and it would need to hit 90% enrichment to be weapons grade, and yet somehow they're just about to do that next week. Come on. They've just been about to do that for the last 20, 30 years. Come on, right?
Yeah.
But watching that go through, I came to realize if this really is two sides, if there really is a party that doesn't want this or that, or if it is that the lobbyists, honestly, make sure that whoever you've elected does what the lobbyists' company wants them to do, and the industries run our foreign policy, and that the industries run our internal local health policy the next 4 years, right? I mean, hey, you let us go after these guys on behalf of whomever, we'll give you health care the next election, right?
It's
and
all
you can
theater.
get involved in that. It seems to be. And really, we the people has come to mean corporations are legally considered persons. They have all the rights as persons. Yeah. So we the people is no longer those with heartbeats and breaths. We the people seems to be those who can afford lobbyists.
In my lobbyists, opinion. I mean, there's a sort of like it's not even funny anymore mentality when it comes to like the reaction I see with a lot of this stuff. I mean, especially like the lack of transparency. Also, there's a delusion of rebellion on both sides. Both sides sort of think that they are going against the system when really they're just like fighting for another slave owner. And it's like, no, if you go to the No Kings rally, the person that was funding that is like of the family that owns like Walmart or something like that. Some fact check that. That is somebody involved in a higher up in Walmart funded the No Kings rally, and it is of the establishment. It's, I mean, even on the Democrat side, even on the right side. I mean, if you look at the change in opinion on Epstein from other right wing commentators, they're all like, give it a rest. It was just Democrat propaganda. And it's like, oh, weren't you like 2 years ago saying that the Hunter Biden stuff was true? And then the Democrats were saying that's Republican propaganda. It's like, what it's literally the same thing, but two different sets of files and folders. It's not even funny anymore. I mean, this is like this is just a joke I have with my friend. Like, sometimes I'll just say some shit and they'll be like, Mike, it's not even funny anymore. Like, this coincidence of like, where someone was from or like what political opinion they have. Like, it's like, oh my God, it's a parasitic mindset in our government. And again, I'm gonna make a shirt that says it's not even funny anymore. It's really not.
It seems to be that it was a natural. This can be a natural progression. The last 25 years of printing money, you can get at without any necessary conspiratorial undertones. It's you need to be funded in order for people to believe that you're the one and only choice as a candidate. You need to run ads. In order to get the money to run the ads, you need lobbyists contributing to your campaign. Once that happens, you do what the lobbyists tell you. And if you don't, you get labeled as certain labels so that you don't get to run next year. I mean, they own, lobbying owns Washington. We've known that forever. And this is where it frustrates me, I think, more than anything, maybe, is that the culture wars in general should have been solved by the boomers.
What does that mean? What do you mean?
This divisions. A lot of these divisions were planted clear back in the 60s, the 70s, right? They were planted by politicians to divide the nation into camps of what do we want the government to solve for us, right? So now we've divided what the government's going to solve, and we'll just keep feeding it enough until it's solving both things.
When most of these problems
for
aren't
everybody.
really even problems.
You don't see them on the street if it weren't for the government,
it's
right?
Like, are we really even talking about that?
Well, my question to that is, like, I mean, we're willing to have that discussion, but we're not willing to have discussion of reparations that were supposed to be happening in 1948 for 750,000 Palestinian people that were displaced, according to the UN, right?
Why would you be so anti-Semitic?
I'm joking. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that it just goes to show that the compassion that we have is packaged and sold back to us by the same politicians that are running on your emotions. John McPhee, sheriff of Baghdad, probably said it best. He talks about we don't make good friends because we run on short memory timelines. Every 4 years, we've got a new priority.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of the world has just watched us flip-flop back and forth and back and forth and back and forth since the 70s. So why are we surprised, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to, I feel like with Biden's, it was way more, I mean, not even, it was still like just as much support for Israel but a lot more Ukraine and stuff. Like, it was just as bad in a different way, and we're still giving money to Ukraine.
Well, right.
It's the same bullshit.
Was a 4-year thing, and we're talking for 55 years, but for the last 25, it has definitely spiked. And then every crisis that can possibly be created then becomes the crisis that Uncle Sam needs to solve. How are we going to do that? Well, drop the contract and we'll figure out this company that just, ran my reelection last week. They got a great solution. That's what I realized in Afghanistan, is that I'm getting threatened with prison because...
You tell us about that story.
Okay. Yeah. So 2004, 2005, Iraq, 2011, Afghanistan. It was the largest special forces mission since Vietnam. They did the surge, but it was a special forces style of surge, and the special forces mission is land behind whomever, live in their villages, befriend their people, teach their people how to sort of manage themselves, recruit and train military-aged males, and essentially take 12 men and turn it into 350.
The Afghan local police.
Right. And so in our current situation, it was Afghan local police. Back in Vietnam, it was,
South Vietnam,
South Vietnam militias, right?
Yeah.
So when they did that, they would say, okay, villagers, we're going to, if you support our NATO-influenced Karzai government of Afghanistan and not the shadow government of Pakistan, then we will give you guns, trucks, uniforms, right? We're just leveraging the government of Afghanistan to open their own doors. So it's Afghan government is arming these local police.
Yes.
And that was a smart strategy because the nationalized police and any nationalized Soviet mentality is a pull system of supply, which ruins your logistics change. I'm sorry, push system of supply, which ruins your logistics change. We create X number, we're going to give it equally to everybody, right? It doesn't account for actual need, okay? So then favoritism develops for the supplies you actually need, and you run favors for those things that people actually need, and you just hand out all the craptacular stuff that nobody does, right? Mm-hmm. So we're trying to teach them a pull system. Hey, this is how you request things, get it to you, only what you need, such like that, right? The complexities of nation building, where the national police forces didn't want to ever volunteer to secure the area because they could be told you're going to live clear over there. You don't get to be near your family. You're a nationalized police force, right? So any of these local police were so popular because they actually wanted to defend their villages. Right?
Yeah.
And they could live at home and they could defend their own villages, and that was the briefing, at least.
Yeah.
So then they would turn and say, Willits, hey, we need guns, trucks, ammo. Why is it not coming down? You need to work the logistics problems. Figure that out. That's
what they would tell you. The locals would tell you.
That was my job.
For
3 provinces was work the logistics issues.
And what was the problem with that? So they were just being distributed on the same amount every time, and they weren't based on the needs and requests.
It's almost like leadership schools you hear now being a top-down system where everybody's in charge. Instead of a bottom-up, encourage your employees, lean on them for wisdom, get them to go. You ever worked in a different team like that? That's more bottom-up. You know what I'm talking about?
Like I work in a nonprofit.
So imagine that for supplies.
Yeah.
Rather than the state saying, this is how much resource we're willing to allocate to you. Here's a check. You would get to turn to the state and say, this is how much we need. And the state would say, okay, well, this is how much we can afford of that. Here you go. So we had to teach them from the very beginning, that sort of thing. Anyway, certain logistical areas, certain infrastructure was impassable. You just could not move things back and forth by road, and so everything that went in was through helicopter, and we're the only ones that have helicopters, really. Afghans had a couple, but so as I'm trying to figure out how to get these parts for this Afghan National Army Special Forces team to get them fully mission capable so that they could start doing their missions alongside our Special Forces team, I get a phone call and threatened with prison and told, if you do that, you're violating the contract. I didn't even know there was a contract. Like, I was like, there's a fucking, what do you take? So, yeah, I was like, all right, hold on. Where you at? He's like, oh, Kabul. I said, cool. You come down to Kandahar very often? I need to have this conversation face to face. Yeah, I'll be there next week. Okay, I'll see you then. Click. I knew where he'd be, so I went down there. And I just wanted to be clear. I'm like, okay, so what's your contract tell me I'm supposed to do? How's your contract tell me I'm supposed to win your war? And it was frustrating because the intel itself led me to believe that if we were successful that summer, this is 2011, if we were successful, man, you just do it one more fighting season, it'll be the end, right? They swear they won't be able to, and I bought into that crap.
Did they say that in Iraq, that it would soon be over?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was so long ago that of course, they'll greet us as liberators. I know that was floated around. No, by the time I was in Iraq, it was becoming a full-fledged insurgency. Rumsfeld had just fired the army. It was just starting, really. So 2004, 2005 was. But in Afghanistan, they had said, hey, we've almost got this wrapped up, right? What I learned that actually means is once we have stability working in the village, the villagers go, well, we're not, this isn't what we want to do.
Yeah.
And they don't. They do it their own way. So even when it is working, the individuals that are working it the way we determine is correct get killed and then replaced with whomever works it the way they're used to working it, which includes the bribes and the corruption and the hoarding of supplies, because that's what they grew accustomed to under our Soviet system.
What was the Soviet system?
The Soviet logistics system. The Soviet, we create, factory create X number. You get X number. Here you go. You know, I don't know. I've never been in a Soviet
It was very just simple and not like
it was push. It was
needs-based.
what we call it a push system. Yeah, we're going to push out the supplies that we've created. The state creates X number of supplies. In the name of equity, we're going to give it to everyone. And,
Well, we know how that goes.
right? Well, sadly, people don't seem to know how that goes because I hear that idea floated around here anymore. You know, no,
New
not a
York's
good idea.
New York's gonna figure out how that goes.
I guess we'll find out. You know, New York needs to look at Argentina, right?
So I mean, we could go over some stuff later about like your opinions on how Afghanistan eventually went. But first, I kind of want to talk about like what was it? You told me one thing that was really profound. You're like, you thought you failed your country when you got it. I don't understand that.
Yeah. So, I developed a blood clot.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they tell you when you go on leave, they say, you know, get up and walk around often. Eat baby aspirin. Wear compression socks. Whatever, right? If you're going overseas, if you're flying for a long time, this is just evidently pretty standard knowledge, right? Well, of course, I'm middle row, middle seat, sitting next to two fairly younger soldiers that haven't probably met their height weight standards by what I would guess anytime recently, right? So I didn't want to disturb them. They're sleeping. I'm a non-commissioned officer, which means I'm always going to put their needs first, you know, just hands down, right? So I didn't get up often unless I absolutely had to go to the bathroom or something. I didn't want to disturb them. Well, I get back in country from my leave, and within a week and a half, I couldn't straighten my leg out. I had a blood clot behind my knee, evidently. The DVT, deep vein thrombosis, evidently. I didn't know this, but evidently what that usually does, it breaks off and goes into your heart and kills you. So they're telling me, hey, man, you need to get on blood thinners and you get medevaced. And I'm going, what? I'm not done. What do you mean I need to get medevaced? Like, do you have any idea how many arms, trucks, ammo, like I got things laid on for weeks that I need to coordinate here. What the heck do you mean I need to go home? What are you talking about? Right. So, I tried as best I could to get, I got yelled at a couple of times. I think there was probably at least a week or two that I just missed the flight. I would just show up at the video teleconference on crutches and they'd be like, Willits, what are you doing here? I'm like, you guys, I need to explain what is going on here. So, I had a personal interpreter, got him out behind me as soon as I was medevaced out. And then I have asked him, you know, what happened when I left, and everything fell apart. All the work that I'd done, kind of fell apart. And then I ordered a book, that evidently kind of seems to, I haven't read it yet, but it looks like it was the same region that I was in just after I left. So I'll get to read about how it all fell apart.
So you had a very good system for like the operations you were doing, and then eventually it fell apart after you left.
It was like I made it work somehow, and a lot of it was just grace, luck, hearing the right people. But it was all based off of meeting the right people and knocking on doors between Australians, Canadians, ourselves, conventional forces, special forces, Navy SEALs, Army special forces. Like there was just 5 or 6 different commands involved in all of this, and I was the only one that was going, hey, they're in charge of this. How about I go talk to them about what we're doing and see if we can't work something out?
Yeah.
You know, it seemed pretty easy for me, but
So you're about to read a book on how that eventually happen.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We'll
I
talk about
ordered
that
it.
another time.
Right. I ordered it. It was like reading the cover, and I'm like, ooh, this might go on the shelf for a little bit. I want to wait.
Yeah. So it was 2021 that the Taliban eventually conquer back Kabul and the evacuation happens. Were you already at that point? You were already just like it's a like you were back home and whatever.
I was out of the military.
Yeah, you were out of the military. But
Yeah,
like, what
by
was
that
your
time.
opinion of that when it happened? Like, because that was like everybody kind of knew it was over at this point. It was like slowly.
Yeah.
Like, what was your point? Like, what was your opinion of that when it happened?
I knew that whenever we did pull out, it would, and I think that's what everybody involved kind of seemed to know. I haven't another book I haven't touched yet is the Afghan Papers. That describes exactly what the brass knew and how early they knew it. All I get was reports from my interpreter, and I'd call him, and he is not allowed to go back to Afghanistan, but his father was a police chief, was the kind of the head of plans and operations for the Afghan, essentially the National Police SWAT Brigade for Kandahar. So he was the chess player of their operations and lost his job and all of his retirement and everything because it's a new government, of course. So my interpreter's supporting his mom and dad and them, but can't return himself.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I know about it.
Yeah. It was there were a lot of equipment there that we that was ours that they have, and why do you think it happened so sloppily, or did you just not pay attention to it that much?
I couldn't speak to how sloppy it was. I know in 2011 I was driving around looking at all of the damaged, destroyed Humvee and Ford Ranger pickup trucks that the Afghan National Police had, thanks to us. And we're talking like warehouses outside of just football fields of destroyed vehicles. And I'm driving through this maze of them thinking, oh, gee, wouldn't I want to be a Ford Motor Company investor before this,
Yeah.
So I really just kind of, after that,
you're just like, fuck it all. Like,
I mean, I'll do what I can to continue. So I got medevaced. I got to a point where I got to see what the Warrior Transition Battalion was all about and see what the Army was doing for these individuals that were getting out, either injured, ill, or wounded. And that became my new mission for a little while. And then, stepped into a civilian world and tried to kind of do my National Guard thing until I hit my 20
years, right?
Yeah. And just thanks.
Yeah. So a lot of people now, there's a lot of opinions about everything, which are mainly true about sort of Israel and Netanyahu's influence on a lot of the Middle Eastern wars. Right now, that's like standard kind of common knowledge for like 75% of the people that go on the internet. But like back then, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, did anybody think that way at all? Like what was your opinion of that, and how that changed, kind of having firsthand viewpoint of their involvement in things?
So I don't know how much going into Iraq I had connected Wesley Clark's list of 7 countries with Netanyahu's speech in the mid-90s, warning against militant Islam and what we were going to be waking up to and all of this. About the time he was writing that book on bringing down some towers and militant Islam and all that.
He says that in a book in the night.
Right.
What was that book called?
I don't know that I'd connected any of that. Israel, Palestine didn't become really into my awareness until I met a beautiful woman from Nazareth, which is an Israel city of primarily Arab people.
Would that be the most, or would it be like another place?
I don't know. I know it's a large, primarily Arab city within Israel proper. It's up in Galilee. It's being the birthplace of Christ. It's a Arab Christian number, and that
So what was that like meeting her, and what was
right.
did you go to Nazareth and
Yeah. So unfortunately, just to caveat and clear the air, with this family, unfortunately, Palestinian people that I met, I love. They open their lives to you. If they aren't good hosts and they don't feed you or whatever, it's almost a shame on their family, right? And non-Western thinking is very much you identify as what you bring back to your family in regards to reputation. You identify as an extension of your family in a way, if that makes sense, right? It's not as hyper individualist as we are here in the West. And so to be welcomed into this family was huge. The very first conversation I had with my former sister-in-law was, we don't believe in divorce and we don't agree with you. We don't agree in her meeting you because of that. And I told her, I don't believe in that anyway. But unfortunately, within 8 years, 6.5 years of marriage and a year and a half of dating, I pushed for that because on a harab kelb, which is I'm dog shit basically. I'm stray dog shit. Cultural differences in what we expected with regards to annual income. I realized I couldn't really provide for herself, her family, the future kids, all that she had, right? It was like, that was so much of her. One thing that she wanted to be was a mother, that I had gone through the Afghanistan thing. I'd gone through the transition thing I'd gone through. And her sister came along and was like, well, how are you going to support family? Step into financial advising so that you might be able to. And I tanked that within a year and a half, unfortunately. So, and along comes the self-sufficient woman that, Jason, you're so clever, and Jason, you're so smart, and Jason, you're everything, blah, blah, right? So I was unfaithful and then pushed for a divorce. That family is beautiful people. So your audience needs to just be aware that family would say, anta, khara kelb, this guy's dog shit, unfortunately. That being said,
yes,
our honeymoon was spent in Israel. And so I got to witness that firsthand. And I got to live within this family and be, I had a yimma, I had my mother-in-law, I had to be a part of this family for 6.5 years, 7 years and get to see that firsthand, right? And what surprised me was that we went over to the West Bank. We went to friends of ours from Omaha in Bethlehem that lived there. And from the moment the bus stopped, there's this mound of dirt. And I'm going, wait a minute. Why is there dirt in the middle of the road? Like, what? And over it walks my friend, the younger brother. Like, what are you doing, dude? What? He's like, oh, yeah, no, IDF put that there. Well, okay, why don't you guys just dig it away? Like, dude, they'll bring in bulldozers and dump trucks and fill it up within an hour. Like, what are you talking about? And that was my first witness to, oh, really? We get to his house, and there's 50 caliber divot holes in the cinder block. It's all brick home on the outside, on the front door, front area. And I recognize that from Iraq. I know what a 50 cal does to that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I know what that is. What in the world is going on? Oh, back in the 80s at some point, there was some AK-47 fire going off somewhere downtown. So that guard tower opened fire on the neighborhood. Oh, really?
That just happened. It was just normal. With the way they were describing it was actually like just kind of normal to them. Like,
I mean, it is normal.
Yeah.
So
what was
the whole reason for that was just the whole reason for that is that you have to drive underneath that same guard tower to enter into your own neighborhood. So you're under a giant machine gun.
Yeah. Is that that's what they call it, right? An open air prison.
I don't know. I don't know how far I'd go with regards to that because it changes so often. They're privileges. The people that live there don't have rights. They have privileges that are granted to them by the Israeli government for some reason, rather than having their own form of a recognized government, which, from my reading of 1968 treaties or what their understandings were. I think it's the resolutions was supposed to be what happened, but they've never been given that opportunity. So I'm going to tell you, you need to clean your room, and I'm going to take away every tool you have to do it. And then when you desperately, because at the same time I'm poking you and poking you and poking you and poking you and poking you, you're going to get desperate and you're going to turn to your brother and you'll be like, hey man, can you clean my room? And then when your brother comes and does it, I'm going to claim that that's not, like the whole, in addition to the dirt pile, in addition to that, we're sitting in a cafe in the Bethlehem Square. So right on the outside of there's the Church of the Nativity and the Church of the Mosque on each side of this square in Bethlehem. Okay. So, and we're sitting having coffee and smoking hookah and enjoying ourselves in the square. And what would be considered, this is 2009, the Palestinian police force.
Yes.
So armed AK-47s run out and they just come flying out, right? And I'm having coffee and tea and there's soldiers like right where your camera is. And I'm going, should I be worried?
Yeah.
And my friend's like, oh no, man, this is the very first time that Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leader, Palestinian Liberation Organization leadership, was allowed to meet on Palestinian soil in 10 years.
He was the leader of the PLO, and he wasn't allowed in
Palestine.
Palestine.
Who's, according to UN documentation, supposed to be, has the responsibility for all of Palestinian behavior.
Yeah.
But cannot raise, they're not recognized by the IMF, so they can't raise an economy. They're not recognized by whoever allows them to actually formulate a government. Israel says, no, they're not allowed to do that. They're too much of a danger. We have to do it for them. And so, yes, every once in a while, they're allowed to meet on their own soil to discuss things. When we're sitting at night and we're sitting there playing whist, which is it's a English card game that is popular in the Middle East. It's kind of like pitch.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're playing whist and just having a blast. And I told my friends, I said, man, this is such beautiful hills. Like, this is the foothills where the angels announced the birth. Like, what? Why would you build cities here, man? Like, look at this. Look on the top of this ridge. Look at this. Why would you build that city? He goes, what makes you think that's ours? I said, because I'm on the West Bank. He said, yeah, I know.
That's just, it's sickening to think that my government, and acknowledges the government that's doing that to them to be an ally. It really sickens me, to be honest.
My family would call them the 51st state. And I think that they would see themselves as really almost like their top dog, and we are there to support them.
Who? Wait, what?
The state of Israel, I would say, that they would see us as almost their foundational supplier, and right? And that's why we carry veto power for any time the international community ever wants to do anything, So
people don't understand. So what does that mean?
So the times that the UN has attempted to hold anyone accountable, we have vetoed it, the U.S. And because we veto it, that doesn't happen. I really highly recommend, this is Broken Promises in White House Meetings. It was put out by an archbishop, by the Metropolitan of the Orthodox Christian Church. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're not talking, I would say, has every reason to be impartial.
Yes.
If possible.
To the situation.
Okay. And really what it amounts to, brief summary, is that the 1948 lines were expanded in 1968 because of our intelligence giving them power over Egypt. But the 1968 lines at least are, this is what the international community, the UN, claims is to be the official boundaries. Every time between the Golan Heights and Gaza and some of those areas that are contested, every time the talks need to be happening, every time we've had a president that has said, I'm going to broker a peace deal, I'm going to get them to talk, what happens is the Arab representatives, Arab community says, stop building settlements and we will come to the table and talk. While you stop, like, you can't continue to build on our land if we're going to be discussing borders that you're already violating. It doesn't make any sense to us.
Why would they negotiate? It's kind of like the well, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Well, I think if I were Palestinian, I consider the Israelis to be the terrorists in this situation. Why would we negotiate with them invading and settling our country? I mean, I'm saying I understand that, that why they want
From their
but nobody
perspective,
understands
yes.
that. Everybody's like,
well,
they're terrorists. Why aren't they negotiating?
I'm
with us?
disappointed in my generation to your generation. That whole swath of us needs to do a lot more reading. In general, we digest information differently, and we need to know what questions to ask and not just accept the narrative that's handed to us. That word's in the Bible, and therefore I should support that side. I mean, it's just, while discussions are happening, stop settlements. Israel says no. The Arabs say, then we're not going to sit down and talk with you. The United States president, or whoever's allegedly impartial discussing it, says, I don't know what to tell you. I can't get them to just talk. The Arabs have tanked the peace deal. Israel, I'm going to hear you. Here's a $4 billion and 40 stealth jets, and don't worry, you have to pay for 20 of them. And, it's just very one-sided, because the Palestinian or Arab community in the United States don't have a unified constituent base to be of any threat to the congressman or the representative, the way that the American Israeli Political Action Committee and Jewish people living in the States can be a threat. And fundamental Christian individuals that support Zionism
And dispensationalism,
can both be a threat to these politicians, where the Arabs cannot. So as much as we can feign shock and awe and I can't believe blah, 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 it really boils down to a lack of participation in general.
In your opinion, that there should be, the only way to combat this is Palestine's form of APEC?
No, I think that the American people in general need to speak up in some way if we are to counter the single-sidedness of who we support.
They call it the unilateral support of Israel.
Who funds Hamas and who didn't fund Hamas that question should be answered after we first say, why is Hamas the go-to? Why is it to vote in? Well, why is it that they cannot rely on the Palestinian PLO, the Palestinian allegedly the "you are responsible" team, to actually do the governance, because they've been handicapped by the international community.
So when there is a more aggressive alternative, that's who they would go for. But
it's the only alternative.
Yes.
It's not like they have. It's not like they have.
Yeah.
This isn't Democrat versus Republican. This is
existence of your country versus non-existence.
This would be basically like Washington, D.C. If again, back to our Estados Unidos metaphor, right? Europe gets together and says, hey, we're sending Spain over to what used to be Southwest United States territory. Spain is going to occupy it. You can just deal with it, United States, right? You can be governed by the libertarians. And we'd be going, but they don't have any real clout. I don't have any real power.
Oh, you know that.
And
You
so
know, any
we'd
third party
probably
would
go to-
lose. Yep. No, I
right?
agree.
We'd go to the more extreme measures, and
the terrorists. You know.
those that we were warned against by the one story that I was told, or that I experienced third hand, that sort of made it really clear to me, even for those who are ethnically Arab, trying to live in peace on land that was given to Israel in 1948, that was olive groves for them. I think back to my own family. My great grandfather was given land after the Civil War service in Nebraska, and that's why we homesteaded there. And that we're tied to that land. My dad he gave everything he could to be on that land farming. And that's the mentality.
You inherited that land for a very long time.
Not, yeah, right. 2 or 3 generations is all. We're talking over there hundreds of years and generations of generations, right? There was 20%, according to the census in 1930s, the UN census of the area before Israel was created in 1948. They relied on census numbers from the 30s. 20% Jews, 80% Arabs, mix of Muslim Christian, but they only count Muslims because they didn't realize that Orthodox Christianity, wasn't recognized quite as vividly, right?
Oh God, that's crazy.
Unfortunately, shocking.
Yes.
So 20% native Jewish people, and they lived in relative peace until 1948, when the Eastern European Jewish line was essentially expelled. In one of the, I don't know if it's a direct quote, but the Palestine mandate that Britain had expired, and 11 minutes later, Truman had pushed for Israel. Right, we had 11 minutes from one to the other. The thought in Europe was it's so much easier to expel these people if we give them somewhere they want to go.
Because all the other countries in Europe at the time of World War II, none of them would take in Israelis. I was listening to the Daryl Cooper podcast on this, and he talks about how Britain wouldn't take anybody in, the United States wouldn't take anybody in. FDR specifically said no, and I'm not trying to. All right, so the Nazis would even help give the Jews that were being expelled credit with their own assets, or some form of we will give you your possessions if you would leave their country. And I'm not justifying that at all, but there was an effort of negotiation of hey, those countries that were expelling them unjustly, they were doing that, and the no country that was on the Allied powers in World War II would take them in. The only alternative at that moment was Palestine for any of them. There was I think no country that would take them in. So you had massive amounts of immigrants coming in. And then those immigrants coming in would hold rallies and marches and say, this is our land now. We finally have reunited with this land, even though you could make the argument that most of them are native to, Eastern Europe through conversion. That's a whole nother discussion. But there was no other option, really, for any of them.
I believe it. So in that becomes apartheid. Okay?
Decolonization.
Right. So when you read, I had read the National Review, conservative magazine, right? And he's discussing Iran's perspective. This is in the lead up. This is last month's issue. All right. So Iran against the West. Israel understands the enemy it faces. Do the rest of us.
God, yeah.
October 7th, as horrific as it was, is the excuse they've used. But the discussion of this, going back into this, today the government most responsible for spreading the accusation that Israel is expansionist and colonialist is the revolutionary Islamic government in Iran, which has spent recent years ostentiously expanding its colonies. What has Gaza become but a colony of Iran?
Oh God! Are you fucking kidding me?
So this is Douglas Murray in the National Review.
That's actually Douglas Murray that wrote that.
Yeah.
Oh my
That's
god.
Douglas Murray, National
He's
Review.
insufferable. I know. We had another buddy on talk about the woke right, and there's like a division of the right that is like sort of disaffected Democrats that are now on the right, but use their like opinions they formerly had as like sort of right neoliberals in the new Republican Party to kind of have opinions, and that's like I see that a lot in Chris Cuomo. Like a lot of the stuff he talks about is just he's just completely insufferable with a lot of his like takes on foreign policy, or he can't own up to the fact that like he tried like there's this thing where like if you're like a commentator, you try to be hip and banned, but really you're not. Like he's like I used to be on all these big famous news sites, and now I'm pushing against the narrative. It's like, didn't you just like try to promote vaccines when you were on this other website? Like Dave Smith was grilling him. Like, you know, I just so much journalists that I just hate. That's why I'm a podcaster, because I'm just talking with people. I'm not trying to like explicitly state shit. You know, I'm just talking. We're just having a talk.
You're not going after those sponsors?
I do want.
You got to go after those
We
sponsors.
need
man.
the Viagra sponsor,
right?
you know. But so
my
talk
living underneath an apartheid state and what that would be like really became apparent to me when I found out from a family member of an American doctor had gone back to live with his family and met his wife and had a couple kids, and the town strongman, big man, the guy that I wouldn't say necessarily an official mayor by any means, but the guy that everybody, you know,
Which
respected
town was this
and
in?
whatever. And just it was a town there in northern Israel in the Galilee area. And his children were playing outside, playing sports and stuff, and this guy's the strong man's two sons were driving vehicles really fast down through the streets, right? Down this bowl of a street through the streets, you know. So the guy stepped out and said, "Hey, you guys slow down. I've got kids that are playing here," right?
Mm-hmm.
The two gentlemen, of course, in a culture where reputation is life, you know, reputation is everything, quite frankly. Do you know who we are? Do you have any idea who we are?
He said that.
That was the guys
okay,
driving,
yeah.
right? And the doctor from the States that had moved back said, "Yeah, of course. I know your whomever's sons.
Yes.
Remind your dad about this time in grade school that something embarrassing happened that this guy knew about because they'd grown to school together." You know, he's like, "I went to school with your dad. I know all about him. I know that. Ask your dad about this time that was some embarrassing incident in grade school," something like that, right? The two, you know, late teen men went back up, grabbed their father, came back down, and killed the doctor. Right out in the street.
They just killed him?
Just killed him. The individual telling me the story, it was his uncle, is he called the Israeli police and said, you know, "Hey, this is what happened. Come." After 3 hours, forces showed up and said, "Why didn't you go take care of it?"
He said that. So he told the son or the uncle of the. Who did he tell that?
No, the uncle's gone. Uncle and his two sons have gone, killed this guy, gone back up. They're safe. He's telling me the story. The guy whose uncle was laying dead.
So he told the police told the nephew, "Why didn't you just kill these two dudes?
Why didn't you go take care of it? We gave you 3 hours."
They said we gave you 3 hours. So that's the nature. That's what they just expect. They just expect them all to kill each other. What
they do everything. I mean, there's ways in which you're not gonna push too hard if it happens. You're just gonna allow things to happen, so that if you are of a certain ethnicity,
so the people, the boss dude was an Arab.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see what's
Arab
going
Muslim
on
guy.
Yep,
Arab on Arab violence. These
they're just like
Israeli
just
police don't
each
care.
Other.
Yep,
That's
we gave you 3
crazy.
hours. So the gentleman telling me the story came here with his family. I mean,
He was like, no, I'm not dealing with that.
You don't have, and it's sad that they call them the 48 Arabs, 1948, the 48
the
Arabs.
Ones that survived
the ones that stayed in Israel proper. They're not recognized by any other Arab countries, right? Because their passports from Israel. So they're not allowed to travel to any other Arab country. They are, they're shunned by their own ethnicities in a way because of that politically, and yet they feel like they're the only ones that stuck around to try to keep the land and try to save the land for as long as possible until now, from 1948, when there was 5 settlement villages and 10 military outposts. And you look at the settlements on the UN data, go to the UN demographic data, all of you. I'm just, the UN numbers are pretty outstanding, right? But it goes from, by the 31s, 48, there's 9 military outposts and 10 communities, Israeli communities. In 67, in West Bank, there's 57 outposts. There's 57 settlements.
Yes.
Okay. In the West Bank. There's 4 in Gaza. By 96, this is the last time that the UN did census data that I could find. By 96, that had risen to 245 cities in the West Bank.
Israeli settlements.
And 33 in Gaza. And that is 96. And then the article that I read from the other side, the non-national review side, said 350 settlements. So you have 350
illegal Israeli settlements.
Well, who calls it illegal?
Only anti-Semitic people call it illegal, right?
I don't know. I mean, evidently, nobody's willing to call them illegal. Israel has issued a statement to Jewish people worldwide: come and live here. We'll give you housing. And they don't bother saying it's going to be somebody else's housing legally.
Yeah.
So, and we, our veto power in the UN has prevented the international community from doing anything about it.
So when you see the Ted Cruz interview on Tucker Carlson or something like that, overall, where a senator, representative will say that the Bible told them that land was promised to the Jews. What do you think of that as an Orthodox Christian? Due to most of the people that would say that are of, I would say either more so Protestant type of groups or some Catholic as well. What would you say to that? As somebody that is not of the,
I'm grateful you brought this up because it gets into a segment that we're going to need to go into a depth probably at a different time, but it comes into a different perspective of Western and Middle Eastern thinking.
Yeah, we can revisit more of this, but
of course,
let's go into
briefly. So Western thinking is very much like your left hemisphere. Okay, it likes to break things down. It likes to find definition. It likes words. It likes boundaries. It likes to take things apart. It likes to deconstruct everything. Okay, to find the core. That post-Enlightenment perspective is the one that reads that somehow in Israel, in Revelation, in the last book of the Bible, that there's going to be an Israel, there's a new Israel, there's blah, 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 and says that that's what this is, the fulfillment of that. In 1948, we fulfilled prophecy. That's the thought. That is the thought. The Orthodox perspective and the early church perspective, and I would say the author's perspective, being that he's my saint. I'm directly channeling now. No, I'm joking. Totally joking. The Middle Eastern and Eastern and Greek way of thinking was that the physical represents an ethereal reality. That the two aren't dislocated like they are in our dualistic Plato's dualism. There's the ethereal, eternal, that inspires the real. Yisrael, in its original Hebrew, is that he who wrestles with God, or he who wrestles with the Most High, I believe.
Yeah.
Fact check me, whoever. Yisrael, El being the Most High, Yisrael. So we all struggle, we all wrestle with God, right? Jacob was renamed Israel for having wrestled with the angel of God. The new Israel is that which is the Christian community, the fulfillment of the Messiah, the transition that Paul recognized in the suffering servant, 2nd Isaiah, that if the Gentile community comes to believe in a God of the creative principle, Yahweh, then that is what the Messiah fulfills. That is the Messiah's role, is that a light to lighten the Gentiles, to be a
So
people.
the philosophy of early Christianity was that you would spread it to the Gentiles, that it is not just the Jews that can understand the Messiah, and there's no sort of ethnically trapping the word of God, as sort of the Torah does in a way.
There is in Isaiah that one of the functions of the Messiah is to awaken the Gentile non-Jewish population to God.
Okay, well, that's powerful.
But the God that we think of as some old long-haired beard dude in the sky that looks at our right and wrong and judges us accordingly is our own construct.
Yeah.
Yahweh, the word that cannot be named, is the reason it couldn't be named is because the minute you think that you can name it is the minute you think you figured it out. And Yahweh is well beyond our little stupid brains, human brains, right? It is the creative principle. It is not just the I am. It is all three tenses are within that.
Mm-hmm.
So I am that which causes to become. I am that which was, is, and always is ever present. I am that which. So it's really more the creative principle. The birth of this new Israel was the belief of God and the faith in the hearts of Christians in the early Christian church. And so it's already been occurring. And the reason that Western thinking expects some futuristic event is because we misunderstand the early Greek, that it is ever present and always growing more so because we have more people becoming Christians, right? There's always more. It's spreading. It is becoming more perfect. It is becoming a better kingdom here, right? So the early Christian church focus was that the new Israel is a spiritual one in the hearts and minds of humans.
So that's why you would see a lot of videos of people in Israel in classrooms teaching that the third temple will be built, that the mosque that it is currently on top of, that the mosque currently is on top of what was the second temple, and there will be the third temple built. And that's sort of this sort of like ideology that if the Jesus is to come back, or in their opinion a Messiah that was not Jesus, the current Judaism, that they need to build the third temple right now. So I think that like if that's that kind of thinking, I think some people call it dispensationalism, or there's some word of it that I don't really know
Sounds
about.
correct. Yeah, it sounds right.
That's what is causing a lot of this. It's this sort of like, and I think that that's just problematic in a way, because he'd just be demolishing a mosque. Not even just that, but also like I would prefer a world where people like look within themselves for the problem, instead of like a plot of land will solve your problem. But that's not the world we live in.
But it is the scriptural world. And that's what frustrates me so much, is that we, again, the methodological materialism is what Newton unleashed upon the world. Okay, we in the West have tried to, like I said, just like the left hemisphere, break everything down. We want to break it all down to chemistry, which just is physics. We'll break it all down to just physics. It's nothing but physics. It's only physics. Well, if it's only physics, it's not real if I can't measure it. So now everything 100% I'm going to say is either an epiphenomenon, you've made it up, or it's real and it's measurable.
No.
And here I have a text that says that I'm the chosen people, and that I get this plot of land over here, and that there's no spirituality involved in it necessarily, because my brain has flattened everything into this physical flatland world of methodological materialism that says that somehow I, as a Jew, get that land. It's a fault in our thinking.
It's not just like
That
one group of
isn't
people.
what
It's
the
not.
author intended, because
it's
they were
just
under a different mindset. They hadn't gone through methodological materialism. They hadn't gone through Western Enlightenment there 2,000 years ago, man. Come
it's a
on.
completely different mindset. Yeah. So you are waiting for your thesis to be approved for
Right.
theology.
I had, yes, studied a lot of this while reconciling, I like to think, Genesis and science for my thesis, and the way that I was able to recognize the problem between that conversation and why in the last 100 years since the Scopes trial, they've been talking past each other, or each side, just like politics, I'm going to take the misunderstanding, the mischaracterizations, and the misspeak of this side, and I'll latch onto it and claim that that's what they said, so that pop culture only knows the stupid, ignorant parts and doesn't bother reading or learning any of the other possible solutions to the discussion.
Yeah. So what is your future with that? Can we expect from that, or are you just
We'll see. I would really like to start publishing in peer-reviewed journals. I would really enjoy bringing a Middle Eastern Orthodox, Greek, pre-industrial, pre-Enlightenment thinking to some of the questions that theology and science are wrestling with right now.
Okay.
Dr. John Hott is a professor emeritus from Georgetown and has been a theologian for a number of years, as a Roman Catholic theologian that I admire a lot. But he's very interested in where we are headed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the conversation that I want to help.
Do you think that maybe the pre-Enlightenment kind of mentalities are more interesting and should be talked about?
I think that we in the West really, for the survival of humanity, methodological materialism coupled with capitalism has resulted in consumptive capitalism and gross domestic product being the only measure of a healthy society. We can't live like that. So we really need to reapproach the East like the prodigal son, or as Ian McGilchrist wrote, The Master and His Emissary, which is where I had a few ideas of where I might take this. And all that the West has in its line of thinking, it borrowed from the East in many ways. Okay,
it's an extension.
It's an extension, and that's just what you also see again in that East hemisphere or right hemisphere, left hemisphere dichotomy, is that the left hemisphere pulls information out of the right hemisphere, forms it into words, makes it tangible, makes it explainable, throws it out, calls it a day, right? We need to approach the East on our hands and knees and say, forgive us. We need to reignite brotherhood with everyone and get over this. The same industrialists that began these arguments 125 years ago as justification for the expansion of American expansionism and colonialism and
interventionism,
capturing all sorts of energy and industry and resource. Your generation, they used to claim that we had the indigo children, and we used to claim that we were like the Generation X to millennials to now the Generation Z has somehow always been the next hope. But I really hope that maybe by now some of those more staunch nationalist tendencies of being the world's policeman kind of go away, hopefully.
I think you could have nationalism without the world's policeman,
right?
Which is kind of where a lot of people think, but yeah. So
I would like to see that from your generation, is to kind of get over some of the old fights and old arguments over things that should have been resolved issues by the time I stepped into college.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I need to look into it a little bit more, which I will. But you can also check his stuff out. He has a lot more thoughts on stuff we talked about on his YouTube channel, and he's waiting on his thesis to be reviewed, and so we will definitely do another episode here. Thank you, Jason, for coming on to the show. This was magnificent and amazing. And, Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And peace out.